Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we are empowered to become consciously curious and unlock the wisdom of the universe that lies within us. I'm your host, Maria Luz, an astrologer, certified hypnotist, and developing psychic medium. Today's episode is called How Do You Define Love and Beauty? Venus in the Birth Chart. I'm talking about Venus today because the astrology has been calling us to review and apply discernment to how we relate to self and others. And Venus is about relationships, for one thing. This astrology lately is driven by a lot of things, but one of them is that the nodes of the moon are in the signs of Libra, which is ruled by Venus, and Aries, which is ruled by Mars. And the nodes of the moon are meant to focus our attention on evolutionary lessons, really soul lessons. And the nodes have been in these two signs of Libra and Aries since July 2023, and they will be until January 2025. The nodes are always in opposite signs, and they are polarities. And so Venus, as I mentioned, has to do with relationship. Aries has to do with self. So the recent lunar eclipse in Libra on March 24th, and then the total solar eclipse in Aries on April 8th, further highlighted an emphasis on these themes of relationship and self. Later on, I'll provide some of the questions I believe we are being called to consider at this time. And as with any self-development work, it is a process. Even though I have been doing a ton of work on myself, especially since I got sober in 2022, there was just some crunchy stuff that came out during this eclipse season, just dredging up some issues that I thought were dead or I was just conveniently ignoring, and they had become blind spots or just kind of part of the furniture of my life. Also, I am giving a workshop on Mercury, Venus, and Mars in the birth chart on April 20th. In the meantime, I'm going to get started. First, to the astronomy, and most of this comes from NASA's website. Venus is the second planet to the Sun. Its orbit is 225 days. It spins backwards from Earth's spin, so the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. And its day is longer than its year. It's the hottest planet, and it is thought to have maybe been a habitable ocean situation, but that was likely more than 1 billion years ago. Now it is hot enough to melt lead, and its atmosphere is so thick that the sun looks like a smudge of light from its surface. You've likely seen Venus in the night sky just after sunset or just before sunrise, and it looks like a diamond in the sky. It really is dazzling. And just one little story about that. I also do mediumship, and in one reading, the spirit was showing me a special symbol for his daughter, and I thought it was a beautiful white dove in the sky, but his daughter told me that when she sees Venus through her kitchen window, like doing her dishes, she knows her dad is close by. So I really felt that while I got it wrong, something inside me also felt like there was some relationship with those two symbols. And so I was happy, or validated, I guess is a better word. When I was researching this show, I saw that the dove was one of the animals that was sacred to Venus or Aphrodite, which leads me to the mythology. And Venus is the Roman name, while Aphrodite is the Greek goddess name. And Aphrodite was one of the Olympians. And according to the popular and poetical notions of the Greeks, she was the goddess of love and beauty. The story of her dramatic birth is captured in that famous painting by Sandro Botticelli entitled The Birth of Venus, which hangs in the Uffizi in Florence. And back in the days when I used to travel before I got my dog, who does not approve of me leaving her, I was able to see it in person on 2 separate trips to Florence, and it is really magnificent. It's hard to describe. It's so large, and just the colors are so beautiful. And just to give a little bit of that story, she is said to have sprung from the aphros, or the foam of the sea, which had gathered around the mutilated man parts of Uranus. And Kronos, who was Uranus's son, had unmanned his father, and thrown those pieces into the ocean. And so that's where that birth myth came from, and it's somewhat depicted in that painting, which I will put a link to in the show notes. On to the astrology. The basic associations are that Venus rules 2 signs, similarly to Mercury, which I talked about last week. And Venus rules both Taurus and Libra. And in Hellenistic astrology, Venus is exalted in Pisces, which means it is in detriment in its polar opposite, which is Virgo. And Venus is in Aries now, so maybe last month you may have felt the effect of Venus being exalted in Pisces. Venus corresponds to the 7th house, which is how we relate. And it really is that first house that's coming out of the lower hemisphere of houses 1 through 6, which really proceed through self, which is the first house, and its polarity, ruled by Aries and Mars, and on through how we get our bearings in terms of the resources that we're on, in terms of who's around us and the home foundation, on to self-expression and figuring out how we fit in serving others. Then we're on to that 7th house, which is how do we relate with ourselves in a relationship with others. And the element it corresponds to is water. The body functions are the process of homeostasis, which is interesting because Libra is represented by the scales. And the other items for body functions are hormones, the renal system, and the circulatory system. And that is also known as the Venus system. So you even hear Venus in that medical reference. The other key body associations are the lungs, the sexual intercourse parts of the body, the whole front of the body, lips, face, and neck. And Venus is associated with the heart chakra, or chakra 4. I see Venus as the archetype of, again, how we relate to other people, yes, but also just to anything outside of ourselves. So material, resources, or living beings. And there's a Shakespeare quote, "Venus laughs at lovers' perjuries," which seems to capture for me the underlying objectivity of Venus. We may try to fool others and ourselves about who and what we value, but there must be a truth underneath our values that feels very Venusian to me. Venus is associated with aesthetics, art, music, and poetry. again showing how we relate to the material objects used to create the creations themselves, and how we utilize the instruments and creations to express our values and to use them to relate to one another as well. So far we've got Venus, beauty, relating, and values. And as it's expressed in Taurus, the archetype shows beauty in nature. In the loyalty as a form of love that's required to sow seeds and then tend to them as they grow, and then finally to reap them and they become material resource. And then in Libra, the archetype expresses beauty in the harmony that a relationship with another person can bring if done well. Also, love for another while one holds oneself in reverence as well, also known as, right relationship. I also find this energy to remain very much in the physical plane, as opposed to the psychological or the spiritual that we begin to see with the eighth house. And in the eighth house, it's Pluto driving that kind of digging into the psychology of how we relate to people and things. And then it kind of moves on from there to the ninth house and Jupiter and on until we get to the 12th house and Neptune and Pisces, which are more about how we connect to source and the spiritual realms. And it feels very much an organic and visceral appreciation of love and beauty with Venus, as opposed to one that's based more on those other types of either psychological or abstract or spiritual analysis. And one of my older son, who's a musician, one of his songs, it feels very Venusian to me. And it also shows or sounds, I suppose is a better word, how Venus feels in Pisces. It's visceral, it's ethereal, it has this watery quality. And it's called Turns Blue, and his band is called Naked Giants. And I'll put a link to the song in the show notes. And my son is a Libra rising with Mercury in Libra in the 12th house, which is, as I mentioned, associated with Pisces. And both of those placements are indications of singers or musicians, by the way. What Venus represents in an individual life are things such as how I relate, what I value, how I manage resources, how I maintain my identity in a relationship, what I find beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. And I believe that the current focus of this Libra Aries axis is asking us to assess a few different things. So if you are one who likes to do this internal work, and you feel so inclined, you can pause and go get your journal and jot these things down and get started on it. The first is, are my relationships serving me? If not, why not? Do I repeat unhealthy patterns in relationships? Are there relationships which need to be let go of in order for me to evolve? What is or was my role in any painful relationship spots or breakups, I suppose? What have I learned? What is my relationship to money and objects? Is the way I utilize both of those things serving my goals? And next, I will give a little description of how Venus shows up in each of the 12 signs. First, as what is beautiful for that sign, and the second as the relationship energy in that sign. So the first, Aries, values as beautiful. immediacy, sleek. The energy in relationship, straightforward, efficient. Taurus, natural, soft, materially valuable. And in relationship, steady, leisurely. Gemini, as beautiful, values variety, cleverness. In relationship, curious, open. Cancer, values stable structure, lasting, as beautiful. And the energy in relationship is nurturing and protective. Leo values as beautiful, brightness, personification. And the energy in relationship is leadership and self-expression. Virgo values as beautiful, workmanship, logical. The energy in relationship is service and practical. Libra values as beautiful, harmony, and that je ne sais quoi. It's that aesthetically pleasing harmony that we just know when we see. And the energy in relationship is aiming towards consensus. Scorpio values as beautiful, mysterious darkness, energy in relationship, psychological depth and intensity. Sagittarius values as beautiful, conceptual, opulent, and the energy in relationship, optimism, freedom. Capricorn values as beautiful, usefulness, traditional. The energy in relationship is dedication and #relationship goals. Aquarius values as beautiful, eccentric, unique, and the energy in relationship is the couple as its own group. Pisces values as beautiful, blurred lines, spiritual. And the energy in relationship is idealism. And I would love to have you join me on future podcasts. If you have been enjoying these, please like them or subscribe or follow, whatever your app tells you to do. I appreciate you bearing with me as I train myself to host a podcast. It's one of the many new things that I am doing at once, maybe something typical of Aries moon placements, just jumping right in. And for today, thank you for listening and becoming consciously curious about Venus with me. If you have any questions, you can email me info@marialuz.online. And if you want to consult with me individually, I offer astrology readings, past life regressions, and transformational hypnosis, which you can find on my website, marialuz.online. I also have some group workshops up on the website, and I would love to have you join us there. I'll link to social media and the references from the show in the show notes. And with that, I wish you a wonderful day, and I will see you next week.